Hello, hello. It is Justin Coletti of SonicScoop, and thanks for joining me for this week's episode of the SonicScoop podcast. And today, I've got the Pro Tools screen ready for sharing because we are going to be taking a look at a mix, doing one of our mix breakdowns. This is a track that I've got to say, I've been amazed in recent years by just how many of some of my most successful mastering clients have used this mix as a reference for being a great sounding mix, a great sounding production, a track where the balances work amazingly well, that has sounds that are impressive, and that just has a ton of forward momentum. For a lot of the mix breakdown sessions, I'll bring up tracks that aren't things I think to listen to myself, but when there's a track that's mega popular and people are using it again and again as a production reference, there's probably something we can all learn from it, regardless of what genre we are working in. And this genre is decisively pop right here, but I've had, hard rock mixers and kind of ambient electronic producers bring up this record for me, even though it's like a mainstream pop hit. And the track is Dua Lipa's Levitating. Levitating is a huge hit. I believe that it is one of the biggest hits of this decade, this century, and this millennium. I think it's in the top 10 in all those categories. I was looking up on Spotify, and I think if you find the basic version of it, it's got 1.2 billion streams, and then another like 2.8 billion streams on the rap remix that was done of this. But we'll be looking at the original track because I think there we can really hone in much more into what's going on in the actual mix. So I think there's some lessons to learn from this one. Again, regardless of what genre you're in, I want to jump right into it. Before I do, I just got to give the quickest of shout outs to our sponsors. The most important sponsor is always being you. How do you sponsor this podcast yourself? Do it by hitting the like button. It's totally free. Do it by hitting the subscribe button. Leave a comment or type into the live chat if you're here for the live premiere. All that stuff really does help spread the word about the podcast. But the best way you can sponsor it is by sponsoring yourself with one of our great courses like Mixing Breakthroughs, Mastering Demystified, Compression Breakthroughs. All of them are guaranteed to change the way that you work forever, for the better, guaranteed or your money back. Yeah, there's a 30-day money back guarantee on all these courses, and they will teach you to mix amazingly well. And not only do we have the courses, we now have a whole members section. Go to members.sonicscoop.com. That's members.sonicscoop.com, where you can check out any of the great full-length courses and our community membership, where we can do the mix breakdown approach on your tracks. Also, big shout out and thanks to Sound Toys, making some of my favorite creative mixing effects in the known universe. Try out anything they make for free for 30 days over at soundtoys.com. With all that out of the way, let's hear this track together, and we're going to do some guided listening. We're going to listen to like 4 to 8 bars. I'm going to tell you exactly what I'm hearing and exactly what you can tune into about what makes this mix work and what you can use from it in your own productions. All right, let's get right into it. Cabello asks, who's the mixing engineer on this one? Great question. I didn't bother to look it up before we started. I didn't want to have all these preconceived notions about it, but hey, any of you who are in the chat, feel free to look it up and type it in, and maybe as we're listening, I'll look it up as well. But yeah, go to allmusic or muso.ai and check out the credits on it. Let me know who the mixing engineer is for yourself. I'll occasionally also bring up our frequency analyzers here so we can see what's going on as well as hear it. But here it is. Let's take it from the top.
And I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way you like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight, you're my starlight.
All right, so here I'm going to stop it before it gets so much catchier that we can't turn it off, because that will happen eventually. So one of the things that work here, this mix is a great example of the idea of taking turns in the mix. There is this concept where, a flawed concept that we have in our heads, where we think that we can make everything in the mix equally loud, equally clear, equally bright, equally big, equally present at all times. We want everything to be the loudest thing in the mix at once. But that is impossible. You've got to do a little bit of mixing triage. So I always start off these mix analysis by reminding you of my theory of mix tiers, that at any given moment in a mix, there's really one or two A-tier mix elements that are the focal points of the mix in that section, or sometimes even in that moment. And then below that, there's your two primary supporting elements, the kind of next loudest or next most apparent things that are supporting these primary elements without taking away from them. And then there's the everything else. And there's a whole lot of everything else in this mix. And I think this is one of the reasons this comes up as a mix reference for people. We see it again and again in tracks that come up as mix references, is there's a lot of hidden ear candy, interesting stuff happening in the C tier that never gets in the way and comes up to A tier and distracts you from the main elements. But for people who want to do deeper listening, there's some little surprise gems and little Easter eggs in there, little tiny pieces of candy hidden among the most obvious elements. The taking turns idea here is that what's most prominent in our intro is not what's most prominent in the first verse. And what's most prominent in the first verse isn't what's most prominent in the chorus. There's a huge degree of taking turns. And with that in mind, I want you to listen to this intro going into the first verse with me. And note to yourself, when we're listening to this intro, these first 4 bars, what are the 2 most primary elements that stick out to you? And then as we get into the first verse, let me know what are the 2 most primary elements that stand out to you. Here we go, taking from the top. Here's our intro.
And I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me.
Now I'm going to stop there because there's another big shift that happens when we go from this verse to almost this pre-chorus section. But in the introduction, there really are pretty much just... arguably, maybe there's 3 elements. There's this kind of main percussive synth. There is, I think it sounds like a separate synth pad that's kind of mirroring it. And then there's noise. And I think we pretty much have those 3 elements. And then if you want to count whatever effects are on them as being one of the elements. And this main percussive synth line is super dominant in the beginning because it's practically the only thing in the whole mix. But then when the track drops, is this main percussive synth as loud as it was? Does it still have a primary place in the mix when the main section drops? Or is it allowed to be replaced by something else? Let's listen for this transition again. Listen to the relative level of the main opening synth and the fact that it goes from being A tier to all of a sudden it's dropped down to maybe low B tier. Let's hear that. Biggest thing.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life.
So what are the loudest elements here? I'm going to say that they're vocal and claps. Now, you might also say bass. And some of this depends on what system you're on, but the reason you might also say bass is because it takes turns. The vocal and bass are probably the 2 most heavily concentrated elements in this main section. But when the claps come in, the claps are allowed to dominate the bass and the vocal. And they can do that because the claps happen only intermittently. So I'm going to say our A tier, once we get into the main verse section, is kind of vocals and bass. But whenever the claps come in, the claps kind of almost overtake vocals and bass and make them seem like a B tier element. The claps in this verse are mixed really loud. However, there's a big element of taking turns going on. There are, in every 2-bar phrase, there's essentially 4 times the claps happen. The claps happen on 2. The claps happen on 4. The claps happen on 2, and the claps happen on N4. And when they happen on N4, this double clap, there's like double the level, double the width. So the claps, which are already loud, are allowed to leap out even more to focus us in on what's the groove, what's important about the groove in this section, what's establishing it. The main things establishing the groove for us are the bass riff and the claps. And something very specific about the claps, this syncopated N4 clap that is happening at the end of each 2-bar turnaround. Listen for that. Now that I've described this to you, listen for that, and I think you can't miss it. What is driving this track? The vocal and the bass, and the clap being allowed to overtake them, and putting tons of emphasis on the clap on the N4. And I want you to really get a picture of this in your mind, because in our next section, that mixed relationship is going to totally change. Here we go.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I could take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect
So we've established it. Vocal, bass line, claps, particularly double clap on end 4. But now let's listen to what happens when we go into the verse. The mixed relationships are going to change. And I know I'm spending all this time focusing on mixed relationships. And I haven't talked about the type of reverb being used on the vocal and what delays are being used and the EQ settings for all the different elements. I haven't talked about that yet. And that is true because all of those things, while important, are of secondary importance to the major mixed relationship stuff. I just had a coaching call with one of my mastering clients just yesterday. Hey, if you're out there, you know who you are. I'm not going to say your name unless you want to put it in the chat and let everyone know. But he had remixed for a client a mix that they had done of an older track they had done. And this was a kind of quirky mix. The two of the main elements in the rough mix that he got from the client were vocal and baritone sax. And the vocals and the baritone sax were the most important driving elements in the rough mix. And he listened to their track and said, oh man, you know what's not present enough in this track? There's not enough kick drum. There's not enough bass. We can't hear the guitar enough. And he almost ended up inverting the entire thing. Instead of taking the really weak kick and bass and guitars and just bring them up to match, to come closer to the intensity of the vocal and baritone sax, he almost completely inverted it, where now the vocal and baritone sax are the quietest thing in the track, and all this other impressive sounding stuff dwarfed the vocal and the baritone sax. And guess what happened? The client hated it because it didn't sound like the rough mix. But also, the original clients, even if their rough mix kind of sucks because it's not impressive, usually often buried somewhere in the rough mix, they kind of know what's most important in the song. And the client was right that the most important things in that song were vocal and baritone sax. And if you get everything else, when you get the most impressive kick and bass sounds in the world, and you get the super impressive snare sound, but then you use them to dwarf the most important elements, it doesn't matter that you did all of that. You ruined the mix and the client's going to hate it and listeners aren't going to respond to it. So the first thing we've got to understand about mixing is getting our priorities right as far as balance. Okay, enough of me yammering. Let's listen to some more music. Now we'll hear this verse where we've established loudest things, vocal, bass, and then the claps, particularly the double claps at the turnarounds being the most dominant thing. That changes when we get to the next section. And you tell me what you're hearing is the two most important primary elements in the next section, which we'll call maybe a pre-chorus.
Rhythm with the music, don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time.
Here we go.
You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you.
And I just want to focus on that pre-chorus section. What is the most important thing happening right now? Before, rhythmically, our most important thing was our bass, but an even bigger accent on the 2 and 4, and the 4 and from these claps. But all of a sudden, they've taken us to a different place in the rhythm and said, no, the 2 and 4 was what was most important in the verse, but now it is time to shake your buttocks. You're supposed to be dancing now. Your gluteus maximus should be maximizing, all right? And the way that we let you know to do that is we're going full-on disco mode here. How do you go full-on disco mode? You stop accenting the 2 and 4, and you start accenting the 1 and the 3. And that's the weird thing about dance music. When we think about dance music, conventionally, we think about, oh, the backbeat, 2 and 4. It's got a hip groove that I can dance to. There's a 2 and 4. Nah, man, when it comes to EDM and when it comes to like disco dance music, it almost has like this march quality of 1 and 3. And you can completely hear this shift in rhythmic intention from going towards accenting our backbeats, claps, to accenting our downbeats. And the fact that we were accenting the 2 and 4 in the verse is what makes the dropping of the downbeats, the 1, 3, 1, 3, sound so big. That there's this contrast where we had this empty space of the 1 and 3 that was being outlined by the bass, really big accent on 2 and 4. But now when the 1 and 3 comes in, there's this contrast that makes us realize that it's time to dance and the 1 and 3 is going to be the biggest thing. Listen for that accent with me. Here we go.
Glitter in the sky,
2,
glitter in my eyes, shining just the way
2,
I like.
4,
If you're feeling like you
2,
need a little bit of company,
4,
you met me at the perfect
2,
time.
4.
You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight. You're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me.
Now, I don't know with the way the cameras are synced if my actual hand gestures here are in rhythm, but you can see it totally shifts from 2, 4 to 1, 3. And what are the musical elements that are doing that for us? Have a listen to the transition again and let me know what's coming in and what seems like the biggest elements in pre-chorus. Here we go.
Feeling like you need a little bit of company. You met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you.
And that is a very short part of the song. But there's like this almost like a cello, there's like a string part, and it sounds almost like an acoustic guitar pluck. I'm not exactly sure what it is. It's an acoustic guitar strum and a cello texture. I'm not exactly sure what is making that one hit so hard, but there might also be an emphasis on the kick drum that wasn't there in the prior verse section that's helping that 1 and 3 get driven home. And they only double down on this 1 and 3 being so dominant when we get into the actual full-on chorus. Let's hear our first full-on chorus and tell me what's different here for you.
You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you, moonlight. You're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You, moonlight. You're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
Now, you can have different perspectives on what are the most loud and dominant things in this section of the mix, because this section of the mix is, I don't want to say congested, because it's not. It's brilliantly mixed and things are well balanced, but it's so dense that depending on what kind of system you're on, you could latch on to different things. But I will say unquestionably, the most A-tier element when we hit the chorus are these synth stabs that happen on the 1 and 3. We do not just have a straight ahead 4 on the floor kick drum. Yes, there's a 4 on the floor disco kick drum happening. But what's really big here are the synth string stabs happening on 1 and 3. And that's what they've done to double down. Hey, what you're doing is almost this march style dancing that's happening on 1 and 3. Listen for those extremely loud synth stabs. They're really panned very wide, especially if you're in headphones, they come even further forward. They're very far forward in the mix. They're very big, they're very bright, but they also have a lot of low end on them. And I would say the most essential elements here in this section are probably the synths, and the vocal are probably our A-tier elements. Let's listen again and tell me if you agree.
You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you.
And listen to that last clap. I mean, the claps are still big, but they're nowhere near like how much bigger they were than everything else, right? So in the end of the first verse, listen to the double clap.
I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life.
Right? The double clap is the biggest thing in the mix when it happens in the verse.
We fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life.
But now when we're at the end of this chorus, listen to how much lower it is relatively.
Yeah, yeah, I got you. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you. Moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You.
So now we've talked about the main elements here. And this is the kind of mix where there's a ton of interesting ear candy happening. And if you really listen to the development from section to section, that's one of the things that gives this track its forward momentum. Part of it is just the fact that if you have a good groove and you get the emphasis of the groove right in your track, regardless of what genre you're in, emphasizing the right parts of the groove is just as important in speed metal as it is in EDM pop hit. So if you get that right, that's big forward momentum. But another thing with forward momentum is, can we have small changes from section to section where we know that we're going to get the same framework that we're living in, but we'll notice different things in the picture with each section. And just one little bit of ear candy here is almost this descending vocoder synth line. Listen for this.
Starlight, I need you all night. Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
Right? That happens only once in this entire section. We're 45 seconds in and we get just one glimpse of probably the coolest sound in the track so far. Like this descending line. Listen for it right here.
Moonlight, you're my starlight. I need you all night.
There it is.
Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating.
Do you hear that vocoder line? I actually missed it the first time through because I was focusing on the downbeat so much, but there's an ascending version of it, and then a couple bars later, a descending version.
Yeah, 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 yeah. I got you.
And it happens at such a weird spot in the groove. And you'll notice this kind of thing happen throughout the song. I wish the song was a little bit less of a sausage, only so I could find my way around the choruses better. But if we listen to the next chorus, there's different ear candy elements happening here. Have a listen to it with me and let me know what pops out to you as far as ear candy elements in the next chorus.
Come on, dance with me. I'm levitating. You can fly away with me tonight.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's the post-chorus. See, sausages, it's hard to find your way around them unless you've marked them first. This is probably a verse here.
I believe that you're for me. I feel it in our energy. I see it's written in the stars. We can go where.
Ooh, so there they are having a rototom doing the N4 beat that the clap was doing. So even in the verses, we're changing little things. Second verse, listen for what is happening instead of the clap on the first N4.
I believe that you're for me. I feel it in our energy. I see it's written in the stars. We can go wherever, so let's do it now or never, baby. Nothing's ever too far. Glitter in the sky, glitter in our eyes, shining just the way we are.
And this is vocal development too. They didn't blow their wad on introducing some of these light harmonies in the first verse. They're being introduced in the second verse. This is one of the things that's giving us forward momentum. They're saying, how little can we get away with giving you in the first verse and keep it interesting so that there's still room to add stuff when we get to the second verse. So listen to the difference in, we've totally changed from a clap texture with really, the harmonies are barely there, to a rototom texture with the harmonies. So let's hear that again. Here's the first verse.
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I can take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like.
There's no vocal harmony. There's almost like a little laugh in the background that you can hear. Tell me if you hear that on, I think it's bar 3 of this verse. Instead of a vocal harmony, is it like a laugh or a cough in the background?
If you wanna run away with me, I know a galaxy and I can take you for a ride. I had a premonition that we fell into a rhythm where the music don't stop for life. Glitter in the sky, glitter in my eyes.
Right? There's little woos. There's a little almost laugh in there. It's almost like the Michael Jackson background vocal approach. And then here in the next verse, we have the rototoms instead of the claps. And now we're starting to introduce vocal harmony.
I believe that you're for me. I feel it in our energy. I see it's written in the stars. We can go wherever, so let's do it now or never, baby. Nothing's ever too far. Glitter in the sky, glitter in our eyes, shining just the way we are. I feel like we're forever every time we get together, but whatever, let's get lost on Mars.
And then so much more aggressive with the filter swells on the background synths, right? Where the background synth sound is going from muted and dark to the filter opens up and it gets brighter and brighter. And we're having this resonant peak in that filter open up. So we're building tension towards the end of this verse that's then released in the pre-chorus.
I'm levitating.
Let me play it back here. No, too far.
I'm levitating.
Ooh, I'm having trouble reading this sausage.
A little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me, I want you, baby. My sugar boo, I'm levitating. The Milky Way, we're renegading. Yeah. I got you.
The filter was here going from verse into pre-chorus. When a track is a sausage, sometimes it can be hard to tell verses from pre-choruses. Maybe I should have mapped this track out before we did the stream.
Glitter in my eyes, shining just the way I like. If you're feeling like you need a little bit of company, you met me at the perfect time. You want me.
And that synth texture is there pretty much throughout, but it's almost not noticeable in the beginning because it's totally masked with a dark, low pass filter that opens up more and more. So by the end of this verse, it's almost like a new element has been introduced, but it's been there the whole time, just becoming more and more prevalent as we go along. Let me go ahead and check the time that we're at here. This is 24 minutes in, and I do such long live streams. I want to see if I can keep one short and tell me if short and sweet is the way to go, or if you guys end up needing a 2-parter on this one. I'm going to go through some of your chats real quick and see what folks are writing in here. Jerry C says, greetings from Mexico. Justin, I watch your videos all the time. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, Jerry, for checking it out. Bill, Andres, great to have you here. Cabello, great to have you here. Mark Gentry, one of our members, great to have you here. Benj, another one of our members, great to have you here. Cabello is asking who the mixing engineer is. Let's see if someone types it in here in the chat. Adam says, greetings from Italy. I've been waiting for another episode of Mix Breakdown. Keep it up. It's so good. So awesome to hear. If you have requests for the next Mix Breakdown, let me know. in the comments or in the live chat, and I do take possible requests. Honestly, one of the biggest drivers for me on mix breakdowns are a couple of things. One, I don't always do music that like I love and grew up on. That's usually not what I'm trying to do. I want to try to do something that is often new to me so I can hear it through like a beginner's ears. But some of the things that really help me choose something for the mix breakdown series are, one, if it's a really, really, really big hit that I actually like, because I don't like most really, really, really big contemporary hits. So when there's one that's awesome, I will do it. Like Britney Spears' Toxic is like one of the greatest huge pop hits of the past 20 years. So I did one on that. And you haven't watched that mix breakdown, you should. It's a great mix. And another thing that'll really make me do these is if people book me as a mastering engineer, or if people are part of our members community at members.sonicscoop.com, and they pull up as references some really amazing sounding tracks. And if enough people bring up the same reference, I'll be like, okay, there's a lesson in this because it's resonating with so many mixer and producer types. Let's find out what makes them interested. That's why I grabbed this particular track. So join us in the member section. Share your records with us that we'll do the mix feedback on and mix breakdowns on your mixes compared to some of your favorite records. And if enough people have the same references, that is prime candidate for me for this stuff. Eaton says, hello. Wonder Arp says, nice synth intro on this. Yeah, really unique sound. Benj, Mr. Penguin. Cabello says, Sonics are amazing. Wow. Ben says, just as I started playing, I got hit with an ad. I'm not surprised that YouTube would rock it that way. Stefan S. says, oh my God, this is my guilty pleasure too. Wonder Arp says, love the claps. You are meant to, sir. Let's see. No one here is mentioning low odds that the drums are from an Oliver sample pack. You have to tell me what that is. I'm not enough into using samples these days, having been mastering exclusively for almost a decade and a half. So you'll have to tell me what an Oliver sample pack is. Eaton says, I have to admit, I've used Oliver. Man, I'm showing my age here. Wonder Arp says, one note high violin in the chorus, not disco without it. Yeah, there's got to be string stuff happening for it to be disco. I don't know, like the first string that comes in the pre-chorus, it sounds to me like a cello or maybe a viola, like a little bit too low to be in the normal register of a violin. And it sounds like an artificial string section rather than a real string section, but it totally works. Wonder Arp says, nice talk box in there, pretty low in the mix. Yes, that's one of the things I picked up. I referred to it as being a vocoder, but probably calling it a talk box is more accurate. Marajan says, I have the multitracks. And multitracks can be great to look at. And there's enough videos out there where people are like, hey, I got the multitracks to Thriller. Let's open it up and hear what the claps sound like isolated. And that's cool, and you can learn stuff from that. But honestly, the best way to learn about mixes is in the context of the full mix, of like actually listening to how the elements in the mix work together. Wonder Arp asks, is it a Serban mix? Josh Goodwin is the mixing engineer, says Panned Phillip. I 100% believe that. This sounds like it could be a Josh Goodwin mix. He has not been on MixCon yet. He should be in our MixCon series one of these days. Mark Gentry says, I like how you're breaking down the elements and how to build a song no matter what the genre. That's super important to me. Honestly, I never want to crack open any track or discuss any specific plugin unless we can find principles in it that are going to apply to music production more broadly. Like I like to take the specific to find general principles and then figure out how we can take those general principles back down to the specific cases that we deal with in our day-to-day life. Domenico says exciting mix for sure. And David Allen says, Wiki says Josh Goodwin mixed it. Totally believe it. Hey, if you want to go even deeper and hear us analyze in real time more mixes and the mixes of your choice, the best place to do that is honestly not putting in a comment and getting me to maybe someday focus on one of your favorite tracks in the mix feedback section. The best thing to do is to go to members.sonicscoop.com, check out our great full-length courses like Mixing Breakthroughs, like Mastering Demystified, like Compression Breakthroughs. Check out any of those full-length courses. And while you're there, check out the membership, the SonicScoop Audio Accelerator Community Membership. And you become a member there and you will get access to mixing challenges, mix feedback sessions, and Q&As where you get all guaranteed answers to your audio questions. I'm going to sound totally arrogant here. I'm kind of like an audio nerd to the point where I'm like an audio encyclopedia. Ask me a question about something audio, and chances are I can answer it right off the top of my head for you. And if not, I will find the answer for you. I will not rest until I feel like I'm the guy who knows everything about audio. So if there's a question I don't know the answer to, I'm going to research it. But most of the time, since I've been talking about this stuff and thinking about it for like 25 years or more, I can usually give you an answer at the top of my head. And plus, not just doing it for 25 years, being too much of a nerd about it for 25 years. So, and it might be, I have to do the math here. It might be longer than that. Okay. I'm digressing. Digressions are part of it, so you should like digressions if you can be in the member section. Last but not least, on the mix feedback sessions, we get to do this kind of analysis to your mixes, give you concrete advice about exactly what you can do to improve your mixes. And we get to hear them in reference to some of your favorite sounding tracks. And the Q&A sessions, we can do analysis on particular elements. This is one thing that I think has been useful for a lot of people in the member section. They'll throw me a track and say, Justin, the guitars on this sound awesome. How can I get my guitars to sound like this? This just came up like, I think 2 Q&As ago, and we pulled up a track. I can't remember who it was from. Oh man, it was like a Paramore track. I don't know, some big rock track. It was like, what is it that's making these guitars do what they do? In fact, there's 2 different songs where I'm hearing this happen in the guitars, and I want to know how to capture the essence of this and do it myself. And I listened to both of them, like, okay, here's exactly what's happening in the mix. Here's exactly what you can do to guitars to make them sound like this. And I can do that for you too. And not just me, but the great resource of the members in our community. A whole bunch of them here on this live stream right now. All right, guys, thanks so much for hanging out with me for this week's episode of the SonicScoop podcast. Remember to hit like, subscribe, hit the notifications bell, and check out our sponsors over at Sound Toys, making some of my favorite creative mixing effects in the known universe. You can try out anything they make for free for 30 days. You got to check out the Decapitator, the Devil Lock, the Echo Boys, probably the best delay ever made. So much great stuff. And also sponsor yourself by checking out one of our great full-length courses like Mixing Breakthroughs, Compression Breakthroughs, EQ Breakthroughs, Mastering Demystified. They're all guaranteed to change the way that you work forever, for the better, or your money back. Thanks again for hanging out with me. It's been Justin Coletti of SonicScoop on the SonicScoop podcast. See you next time.